Okay, so I'm gonna have to do this a little bit weird way because Visor keeps messing up. But all right, so going over the comp right now, you guys have Diva, Ryan, McCree, Farah, Mercy, Lucio. So this is gonna be a good comp for putting in range damage before the brawl initiates. Uh, so let's see how it goes. So you start to take this approach here, and I know because I've seen the video already that you don't. Actually like to take this high ground approach here with the signs because it lets you spam into the enemy's main choke. And if I was on Visor, I'd have the drawing tool to supplement this. But um, going through this high ground here with the signs lets you use the signs as cover because they actually can't be pierced through by fire in case they have a hit scan, while also letting you scout out the enemy team. And since this is a fight club, there's probably very little coordination going on in your own team, so it lets you kind of see where they're going to go to, and lets you have two walls on either side of you to be able to concussive blast off of and get to where your team's going to be going. Remember that these chokes, the doorways there that the enemy's going through, are pretty narrow actually. Like your rockets take up a pretty good amount of that door, so it's really easy to land those shots in there. And given that a damage boost to rockets over 150 damage, that's huge. So, because you change your mind here, you're a little bit behind the team. The Lucio manages speed boost the other remaining members of your team away from you and your primary healer, your Mercy. So the enemy team actually had noticed this, that you were separated. They should have dove those four characters that are on point, leaving you and Mercy over here, and they would have gotten an easy kill because they would only had Lucio to heal them on point. Instead, they try to dive a pharmacy, which really isn't possible. You get a backup frag, which is great. It's actually probably what wins you this point since that's their primary healer. Because this fight takes a while. Nobody's really landing a lot of shots, but you're able to eventually get value in. So one of the big things about this fight is that you waited a little too long after Jump Jet came off cooldown to use it. In the middle of a team fight, like a mid-fight scenario, Pharaoh wants to be up in the air. It gives the Mercy an escape route. It lets you get easier shots, like that Baby Diva shot was a pretty good example. Um, Damage is a lot easier if you're than if you're like low on the ground trying to hit shots because your rockets only move about 5 times faster than the player models do. So for every 5 meters it moves, the enemy has already moved a meter out of the way and can potentially just dodge shots all day if they're 10 plus meters away. So especially like a Genji and a Tracer, you really don't want to try to shoot at them early in the fight either. I don't think you actually did in this fight, but you do in later fights. Just because it's so easy for them to dodge your rockets, it's a lot better to try to put that damage on something that's guaranteed to be hit. This actually throws this whole defense here. This is a terrible place to defend. You really want to defend over in the where the statue is, especially if the Reinhardt. I think he swapped the Winston at this point, but it should have stayed Ryan. You want to hold that statue area. It lets you spam the main choke they exit out of right here. As Farah with again those 150 damage rockets, you're wanting to be right above that statue, high up in the air. It lets the McCree cover the two low ground exits, while you cover that high ground exit as well. So it takes away a lot of the enemy's mobility when they're on full dive because a lot of their mobility is built in through vertical movement. So Diva, Winston, and Zenyatta, or not Zenyatta, Genji all want to take vertical approaches to things. That ceiling being inside that room takes that ability away from them. The only defensive way they have to get through the choke is Defense Matrix and Winston Bubble. If you're able to force those cooldowns out before the fight even starts, that's huge, especially if you have range damage like Farah and McCree. Uh, because now they have no way to stop your damage in the middle of the fight. It also gives your team an ability to rotate back to point if they take this approach that you're on right now, while giving you the windows to fly back on a point safely, or following behind them, which is actually what I like to do. Uh, Basically through this alleyway that you're viewing right now, but you'd be on the other side shooting in while they're on the spot you're in. Instead, your team kind of clumps in this back left part, which is not a good place to hold because there's no cover out here, and they just take your entrance to the point away from you. And yeah, so you're stuck out there with no cover. It's not a good thing. So yeah, pretty much every comp, this is just not Farah commenting, but every comp wants to hold that choke. I can't think of a single comp that would not want to stay on that choke there, especially against dive tanks. So you guys are regrouping. That's okay. You try to take this high ground approach here, which is all right. It's not terrible. But then your Winston goes in for no reason here in a second and dies. You should back up here. Nobody should be committing to this fight. This actually, this attack's over, and you not backing up here throws the next attack. It actually, you get spotted as you try to back cap. It'd been better if you died there, actually. You'd been back faster, and your team might have noticed that they need to regroup. Tracer in the bottom left there. You're focused on the pack, see it and see her. She kills you. But your team commits anyway. Communication should have been there, telling them not to commit. And that's the big reason that you should have fallen back, is that D.Va bomb right there got your Mercy. So had you backed up and coordinated with, or gotten back together with the team, one, you would have probably been able to pressure the Tracer away from dealing so much damage to the Lucio. So he wouldn't have had to use his heal amp just to stay alive. And then two, you would have provided a flyaway path for your Mercy to get out of that D.Va bomb. So right now it's a 4v3 about to be 3v3 when the Winston kills the Zenyatta. Yep. You would have been there. It would have been a 5v3 on point with damage boosted Pharah rockets coming in. Plus you would have had your ult. This was the other big mistake. So there's three major mistakes that you make this fight. One or two are kind of like positioning. So, or one's positioning. So the defense, big mistake on where you're trying to defend. Two, you you continued to try to fight a fight that was already lost, and you should have just backed up. And then three, use your cooldown here for no reason. You can jump over that wall just by jumping and using hover. You also should never take these normie doors you're about to go through. You're a queen of the sky. Take the sky entrances. They made these entrances just for you. They're special Pharah things. They might as well just write Pharah over the top of them. Because you see, you're low on the ground trying to hit these really maneuverable targets, and it's really hard to land these shots. Had they focused any damage at all, you'd be dead right there. But the fight's already lost here in a second. When he comes in with that Transcendence and the Blade, the fight's done. You should not use this Barrage here because it's a 5v1. You are not going to get any real value out of that. Especially a Moira. Moira can just shade step or back to avoid it, one, or two, use it to get back to point faster than you can. Again, use your cooldown for no reason. It's not that bad this time. It still would have been better to take that high ground because you would be able to scout where the enemy team was. You would have been able to see that Winston on that off angle looking for the dive. You might even be able to bait the dive out again, kind of like you did that first fight where they dove the Pharmercy for no reason, because here their dive actually was clean enough to see enough frags for them to win this fight. So you kind of already lost that one already. So the biggest things were manage your cooldowns a little bit better. If you don't need to use jump jets, don't use jump jets. Save your jump jets for the fight or for setting up for the fight. Or using approaches, because Pharah's whole thing with her character, the whole design of the character is to take these awkward angles for the enemy and force him to split fire, either up in the air so your ground targets, your ground teammates can get value easier, or they focus on the ground, allowing you to get free value. You staying low on the ground at the same level as your teammates doesn't really do anything. You're just kind of a worse Junkrat at that point. So take that high angle. That's the whole purpose of her character. Use that angle for scouting too. That's scouting and then allowing the Mercy and escape routes, two very underrated aspects of her kit. Don't commit to a fight that's already lost, and backcapping's a meme for a reason. And then the last bit was that defense. There's really no comp in the game that would not want to hold that choke. That choke's just free damage. You do have pretty solid aim with her rockets. Nothing, you're not Falkia or anything like that, but you're solid. The shots would be easier. In fact, you actually land a lot better shots when you take those high angle uh, plays where you're flying high up in the air. So continue to try to do those, and really think about where you should be to get the most value out of her. Because that's really the aspect that I think you're lacking right now, is where your position should be in the fight. If you work on that, I think you'll see a lot of improvement.